Tanzania, after at least 25 Tanzanian truck drivers entering Kenya tested positive yesterday and were turned back. Now, this comes on the back of a meeting of 4 presidents within the East African community, including President Uhuru Kenyatta, to discuss measures to reduce the economic and health disruption brought about by Covid-19. Now, let's run you through some of the numbers released by the Ministry of Health this week in regards to our border. On Monday, it was reported 14 positive cases at the border, 9 Kenyans and 5 Tanzanians. Let's take you to Tuesday. 2 positive cases at the border, specifically the ISEBANIA area. All right, let's take you now to Wednesday. Just yesterday, 25 of those truck drivers I mentioned turned back at the Tanzania border. They were tested, found positive, and they were turned back. And today we were informed of 8 positive cases, Namanga and ISEBANIA to be specific. So there's a growing trend there, and it's something I know the news gang will also be discussing. But first things first, joining me just to have a little discussion on this is the Cabinet Secretary in the Ministry of East African Community and Regional Development, CS Aden Mohamed. CS, thank you for making time for us this evening.
It's a pleasure.
Great. I think the question that many Kenyans are asking tonight is there a plan to close border movement between Kenya and Tanzania, especially if this trend continues?
Well, at the moment, as you know, borders are all closed to individuals and people crossing from one country to the other. However, borders are open for movements of cargo and essential goods between EAC member states. As you know, East Africa is our biggest trading partner, and the movement of cargo within this region is quite important, and that movement has not been curtailed as yet. Having said that, we are paying close attention to the positive cases that are now emerging across all the border points, especially coming from our southern neighbor of Tanzania.
Okay, so, and I think many would have wanted to know whether the possibility of a complete shutdown, is that something that you've been discussing? I know how disruptive it would be in terms of the movements of goods across the border, but is there anything like that on the table should, you know, the situation worsen?
Well, at the moment, you know, all the heads of states have accepted that we must allow free movements of goods across all member states, and that is happening. However, that actually carries with it certain risks, especially the risk of transmission of COVID through truck drivers, which is becoming the single biggest exposure for all countries, because each of the member states are taking its own initiatives within its internal borders, but entry through border points through truck drivers is now becoming an emerging problem. And one of the key issues that were discussed by the heads of states on Tuesday this week was how to work amongst the member states between all the relevant ministries to make sure that management of truck drivers without impeding the movement of goods across border is actually dealt with, addressed through the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Transport, and Ministry of East African Community ministers.
CS, you referenced a meeting on Tuesday. I know there have possibly been at least 2 other regional meetings, but the common factor of all those meetings is that Tanzania has been missing, or at least has been reported as missing, not represented within those meetings. Where has Tanzania been in the midst of all these discussions between the region?
Well, we are talking to Tanzania on a bilateral basis. Of course, they are a very critical member of the East African community. And as a matter of fact, the last meeting prior to this one of Tuesday aborted not as a result of Tanzania, but as a result of other member states not being able to attend. But the important thing is work continues. The last meeting heads of states had was a consultative meeting of the summit members of the 4 countries. That did not include Tanzania and Burundi. But the decisions and the discussions that were made would also be relevant, and we will be discussing with the relevant departments to make sure that as a region, we work together, we all acknowledge that this problem will never disappear. However good we are in our respective countries, our porous borders will make it difficult for us to eliminate this problem if we all don't work together in unison. And that is why I think the engagements are important. If we can get everybody around the table at the same time, we do it. If not, then bilateral engagements will carry on as we are doing with all the relevant countries which we put as Kenya.
CS, have you been able to assess the value of business that has been lost since the testing protocols started at the border?
Well, you know, we have approximately $2 billion of trade volume between Kenya and other East African member states. Our biggest share of that trade is between Uganda, Kenya, as well as Tanzania. We believe with the current delays that are happening, there will be a significant amount of reduction. And I estimate something in the region of 30% or so, if not more, as long as this problem doesn't extend further. I think we could probably manage it. But if this goes any longer than 3 to 6 months that was anticipated, we could see the trade volumes drastically reduce. Just to give you an example, a truck typically moves from the port of Mombasa to Kampala in about 3 days going back. Today, at best, that is about 7 to 8 days.
My goodness.
So if you think about it, it's a 50% possible reduction. Not only is it disrupting truck drivers or truck business, but also the demand side of the businesses and the trade is going to be affected significantly. So part of the engagement and the direction heads of states gave on Tuesday was for the relevant ministries to make sure that we work together across the region to mitigate the negative impact this disease have actually caused to make sure that people don't suffer.
So yes, our time is actually up, but I just want to slip in one more question. One of the suggestions we are told Kenya proposed during that meeting was to have drivers given some sort of pass to ease movement across borders once they have been tested. Is it something that was accepted by regional partners? Could this be the future of travel in East Africa, for the near future?
Well, at the moment, if people travel to different countries today, you carry yellow fever cards just to show that you are yellow fever free and vaccinated. The biggest disruption today is at the border points, and we have seen pockets of serious disruption. For example, in Malaba, where we have typically 1,200 trucks crossing from Kenya into Uganda on a daily basis, with tests being done, samples being taken, which on average take 2 to 3 days to get results. We had at some stage 40 kilometers long of tracks. The delay has been, significant. So heads of states have agreed that we will be testing our truck drivers in their countries of origin. And as long as those tests are valid for 2 weeks, we should allow truck drivers to cross across border points. And that, I think, I'm sure the health professionals will have something to say about.
Yes.
But it's all intended to make sure that we smoothen the disruption that is currently happening at border points. And so in principle, that has been agreed. And our president has directed the Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Health, and the Ministry of Eastern Affairs to work together to make sure that that program is facilitated very quickly.
CS, thank you so much for speaking with us.
And I think finally, what I just want to add, one of the key things that was agreed by our president was that Naivasha Inland Container Depot, which is something that has been under development for a while, would now be a point where transit cargo would now be lifted. That is going to Congo, Uganda, Southern Sudan, from Mombasa into Naivasha, and then trucks will be picking it from there. That will reduce the significant amount of tracking time that is currently happening. And then I think that adds to the kind of things that we have done as a country in terms of oil jetty in Kisumu, where oil is pumped from Mombasa up to the Kisumu jetty and go through Victoria across into DRC, Uganda, and as well as Rwanda as well.
CS, thank you so much. Some interesting points that you've raised there towards the end. We'll find more time to talk to you at a later date. But thank you for speaking with us. CS Aden Mohamed, Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of East African Community and Regional Development, shedding light on the challenges at the border, how long it now takes for a truck from Mombasa to get into another country, and what is being done to solve this situation in terms of collaboration between different East African countries. Well, time now for